Hiya, I'm Charlie. I'm the Activities and Culture Officer at the Students' Union, and I'm here with Duncan Ivison and Nila.
Duncan Ivison, President and Vice Chancellor.
Hi, I'm Nila Guri from MEd Psychology of Education program, and I'm an international student.
So we wanted to talk a little bit about student support this morning, and I was wondering on what your sort of perspective is on specific tailored support for international students and what the university owes to international students in terms of specific tailored support.
Yeah, it's a really good question. And, Nila, I was an international student from Canada, in London when I did my PhD, and I did my master's as well. So I know a bit about what it's like. I mean, didn't have to travel as far as you've had to come to us. But, I think we owe international students an enormous amount. They bring so much to our campus. They bring so much to our university. They're amazing contributors to the community. So I think we have to think about the scholarships we offer and the bursaries we offer. That's really important. There's never enough, so we need to constantly be thinking about that. And we want to raise a lot of new funding in that area. We've got some in place, including for master's students, and that's great to see. But then I think we need to really reflect on the experience of international students when they come. How do we help them kind of get integrated into the community? I know sometimes international students really want to feel like they're part of the broader community and not just be on a small part of it. So how do we get them meeting local students? How do we get them getting all the information they need to get right into their course, understand the welfare and support they have access to? I think sometimes international students, and Nila, I don't know, it'd be interested to get your view. Sometimes international students aren't aware of what they can have access to, right? So, how do we make sure they've got all the information they need? One of the most important things to me is, and I was fortunate, the LSE where I did my master's and PhD had, I think, 70% international students or 65% international students. So you were part of a big community. And one thing I really want us to do is make sure they feel part of the Manchester community. Like, how do we do that? How do we work with the Students' Union? How do we work with our colleagues to make that happen? So yeah, I think there's a whole range of things we need to be doing in this space. But I don't know, what's your experience been like, Nila?
I can relate to a lot of things that you just discussed because I got a bursary, which is like a big relief because most of us come here with a student loan. And about the resources as well, we are definitely overwhelmed when we get to Manchester, and it's a huge place. We're here for the first time. Even though we are like grown-ups, we know how to get around, but having a little bit of help to navigate through would be great. And I heard from Charlie that we had pastoral support before, like a few years ago. So if we could get it back, I say that would be great.
Is there something that's missing that you think is really we should be thinking about that we don't have in place now?
Yeah, like personally from my experience, I'd say there's a lot of resources out there which we can get, but it's not centralized. If I can like contact just one person or like go to just one desk support where I can ask them about all the issues that we have and then get redirected to like different places. Maybe like if I have any questions on like visa stuff, I'll have to go to the visa office or finance office. So when you get here, that's a bit confusing for us to.
So like a one-stop shop.
If we can have like a centralized system, of course, like it depends on like different people, like what course they do, the requirements are different. But like in general, if we can have like one.
Yeah. So speaking of visas and immigration advice, actually, I was wondering if you have any priorities around like increasing the capacity of the visa and immigration advice service on campus, because I know that their queues can end up really, really long over there, and obviously because we have to offer that specific type of advice, there's a very small group of people who can offer that advice. So yeah, I was wondering if you have a vision around increasing that capacity or doing something else to help those students in that queue.
Yeah, look, I mean, good question. I mean, I don't have anything to sort of announce today, but yeah, let me take that on board. I mean, I had I remember myself, this was a long time ago, but that is a very stressful thing too, right? your visa has a deadline and it expires, or you got to do certain things by a certain date. So I get that anxiety. So look, let me take it on board. I think, you know, we want to make sure our international students are getting the right visa advice, and if it is under-resourced at the moment, then yeah, we should look at that.
It's just a suggestion, like for especially like PG postgraduate taught students, we are just here for 1 year, so we have a lot of things. We have a lot of things on our plate for that 1 year. So if we can get this visa advices like in the first 3 months that we are here, that would be great, because most of us don't know what's gonna happen. Like there are high chances of us getting like a resit for exams or like resubmissions of assignments, and that affects our visa eligibilities. So me personally, I'm not looking forward to getting a graduate visa, but my visa is only valid till January, but I might have my dissertation deadlines later on, so there are confusions on that. So if we can have like this one extra induction or something.
Yeah, no, that's a good idea. So I guess you're right. The master students have just a much more limited time than someone who's here for 3 years or who's doing a PhD. So
I think like different schools can do that for their, like, just one extra induction that explains us, okay, if this happens, this is going to be the result of it, or this might affect your visa, rather than having a resit already getting anxious about it and then knowing, oh my God, I can't stay here or something like that. That would be great.
Okay, no, that's really good. That's a really good suggestion. Really good advice.
I suppose without you having anything specific to say about the future of the Visas Advice Service today, just sort of more philosophically, what do you think the university owes to students in terms of advice around visas and immigration? I mean, obviously, we've had some high-profile cases recently with students at our university having visa troubles. And yeah, I was just wondering.
So, I mean, philosophically, I think we owe our international students as much support as we can give them in this space. I mean, we have obligations that are imposed on us by the UK government that we have to fulfill. So there are certain things we have to do to validate students' visas and validate their attendance and all that sort of stuff. And, you know, sometimes students don't like that, or they think the university is kind of, you know, operating as a kind of, you know, big brother-like entity. I don't think that's the case, but I get that. But I think we owe it to our international students, because, I mean, you know, look at Nila, you've come all the way here. It's a very brave thing to do. You know, you get on a plane, get off in Manchester, having never been here before, having to kind of build your life, start a new course, meet new people, deal with all sorts of new things, right? So I think we owe our international students an enormous amount, and I think at the very least they should get the advice they need in order to succeed. And I think you're right. I think some students who are here for shorter periods of time probably need more advice more quickly, and so maybe we should think about how we segment that kind of service that we provide. So I think that's a fair comment.
Yeah. Speaking of that sort of the attendance monitoring thing, obviously you came into post at sort of the same time as that coming into use, similar to me actually. Obviously it wasn't something that I used as a student, but while I've been in this job, it's come into play. What are your thoughts on seats?
Yeah, look, I mean, as I said, as you said, I wasn't here when it was implemented, but, you know, I have been teaching this semester, and so I've had the experience of getting the code up on the screen and helping students, you know, register their attendance and everything. Look, I think it's a pretty good solution to what I hear was in place before, which was a bit more haphazard and you had to queue up and stuff. I mean, maybe
I still do it.
You still do it?
I don't use the Seats app.
Okay.
I have to come in and do the check-in in the university.
Right.
But for me, that's a motivating factor to get out of my room.
Yeah, sure. So look, I mean, I mean, don't forget, I mean, so Seats is in part about the obligations we have vis-a-vis the UK government to make sure that people are fulfilling their visa conditions. And I think the goal there is how do we do that as efficiently and as effectively as possible. I'm sure you can argue about this app or that app, I get that, but I think the team's done a reasonable job there. The second thing is we know, all the research tells us that one of the first indications of students really starting to disengage is they stop turning up to class, right? So it does give us a reasonable data point at which our teachers and our sort of T&L support teams can say, hey, actually we've got a group of students who haven't come to class for 3-4 weeks in a row. Let's get in touch. And we know that's one of the earliest indicators of disengaging from your course and then finding yourself in all kinds of strife potentially. And you might be struggling with your mental health, you might be struggling with your accommodation, you might be struggling with just understanding what's going on. And we want students to get help first before they find themselves in other kinds of scenarios. So I think I get the whole Big Brother thing about seats, I get that, but frankly it's got an upside as well in terms of doing some of the things we need to do more efficiently and also giving us a useful data point to help students when I think they need it.
Yeah. In my experience, a lot of the comms around seats has been about that well-being aspect. I'm wondering, do you think that international students know that the data that they put into seats is being used differently to home students? And do you think that's something that the university needs to make a bit clearer to them?
I mean, Nila, what do you think? I mean, do you know about seats and what it does?
No, I don't know about it much especially because I don't use seats.
Yeah.
So I have no clue about it, to be honest.
So look, I mean, I think it's fair. I think it's a fair comment. I think you always underestimate how communications kind of penetrate the student community, if I could put it that way. So you've got to always be thinking about how you can do it better. So
I'm sorry. We still had a online check-in
Yeah.
thing during lecture, but sometimes it worked, sometimes it never worked. So we were like, are we getting the attendance we need? Like, is it getting registered? Or like, I couldn't do it the first few weeks of my lecture. So
Right.
I was like, so how is it going to attend? Like, the attendance part of stuff, we don't know much about it.
Right.
Like,
Okay. I mean, like I said, the data I've seen is that seats is working reasonably well. I mean, there's always bumps when you introduce something new, but I think on the comms, we can always probably do a better job. No question about it.
When I told my friends that we were having this talk, one of them came up with with a question, which I think is really good. Like, we have something called Manchester Calling, where students or I think student ambassadors or people from different departments call students who are coming in. So we got a call when we were back in India. But the thing is, the person calling was not from the same course, not even from the same school. So it was, not that useful in a lot of ways when it comes to relatable things, especially about the course or something very academic. So I wish I had that relatability with the person who I was talking to. And one of my friend, when she got to Manchester, she got selected as a person who does this. So she said she had to call engineering students. Well, she was from management. So she suggested that if we could have that calling from the same department or something, that would answer a lot of questions.
Yeah, so it's all about giving you as much advice before you arrive as we possibly can. So that's a great idea. I mean, I think it's a good thing to have students calling each other and saying, hey, welcome to the University of Manchester. I mean, that's a good thing to do. But maybe we need to find a way to make sure that, you're doing a master's in educational psychology, right? So maybe someone from education had called you instead. So okay, that's a good idea. You're full of good ideas, actually. This is really
because I've been walking around different offices,
right, okay.
Too much, I'll say.
Yeah. Okay, good. That's good. You've got real insight into the place.
It's like the International Society here. I'm part of the International Society here, so I used to go to them a lot for some support. So they were more like my pastoral support work. And one of the staff, she was a student here, so she could help me get around. And I'm someone who would love face-to-face interactions rather than communicating through emails. And there could be a lot of people like me who would love that one-on-one support. And yes, I am taking the well-being support, and from the seed they were really supportive. But comes back to that first thing that I said, having it centralized somewhere. And that's something that stays in my mind as the general.
So what's been the biggest challenge you faced as an international student? in Manchester?
For me, I'll say it's basically this thing where there is too many things out there, and we are overwhelmed and we don't know where to
Right.
go, what to do. Like another thing is I'll be going to a student support hub, talking to a staff, but as a follow-up, when you go again, it may not be the same person, or having to book appointments sometimes, and things change over 1 week's time, and having a follow-up. That's why the pastoral staff idea not idea, like when she told me, I'm like, oh, that would have been good, like channeling it through that one person who can have it recorded, like they know what you've been through. That's something.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Okay, that's good advice, yeah.
I was wondering about, because obviously there was a time when you were an international student in the UK. I was wondering about your experience with sort of induction, and maybe also now when you've just recently moved to the UK for the first time in a long time. Your sort of experience with induction. I know there was a time when at the uni, part of that pastoral support offered to international students in induction was taking them to a supermarket to show them what the cheapest thing to buy is, or telling them the difference between M&S and Lidl or whatever it is. What have been the most helpful things to you in terms of people helping you out with induction when you got here?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I remember when I first moved to London, like finding a place to live was just a nightmare. And it was very different from, my experience in Canada, where it's a different kind of accommodation setup and everything. So I was just completely out to lunch and made some really bad decisions, I remember, as a result. So, the LSE at the time did a pretty good job of inducting us into the university, right? Got lots of support. My supervisor was great. My fellow students were great. We kind of hung out together, and it was very diverse, as I said, LSE, tons of international students. But there was almost nothing in terms of settling into into London, into the UK. It was just, you're kind of left completely on your own. So I think we do a slightly better job than that. But I did, when I first arrived, I did this really nice Instagram takeover with Aurora, who's an international student from China, and she told me a story of when she first moved to Manchester. Nobody told her that you had to put your hand out to stop the bus. I had the same experience my first week. I was waiting for the bus, and I was standing there, and the bus came, and it just drove on past. So I mean, and she shared the same thing with me. So I think she did a little video not long after she arrived, saying for international students, put out your hand, and this is what happens when you go on. So I think we forget, as I'm sure you've had the experience, that all this micro social stuff, which makes life kind of work, international students don't really know about. So, how do we help them navigate that? So there's probably more we can do on that space. But from what I hear, the International Society does a great job, taking students out and showing them things. And I think induction is something that you've always got to be looking at from the perspective of the person coming in, rather than from your perspective, having been here for quite a long time. Social media, and they seem to do some pretty fantastic trips and stuff. So have you got involved in that?
Yeah, the International Society has trips every weekend, and they have like socials during the day, the weekdays, like on Wednesdays and Fridays. But I've met some of the people like who graduated in the past years who actually travel every week just to attend the socials. But and I got to meet a lot of people, and luckily I'm one of the trip leaders, and I got to travel around UK with them, and that's one of my favorite parts.
What's been your favorite trip so far? What's the trip you've enjoyed the
most? That's a tough question. All the trips I've led, I'll say I really loved Cambridge, because it was nice weather, it was sunny, and we did like punting and all that. If not as a trip leader, I really enjoyed Windermere. It was raining, but still, I don't have that responsibility, so I got to really
just enjoy
that.
Yeah.
And I can also take a friend with me if I get selected as the trip leader. So that's also a good thing. So yeah, being part of the International Society for me it's like a grounding part of it, and I really enjoy it.
So one thing that really helped me when I got very involved in the student union at at the LSE, and that was a great way of meeting people. But not all international students maybe feel as confident or feel like they want to get involved. So, I mean, are you guys thinking about how you get more international students? I should ask, are international students getting involved? I mean, we have international students, obviously, student reps right now, which is great. But, how are you guys thinking about how to get international students involved in the life of the student union?
Yeah. So yeah, obviously we've spoken about the International Society. That's a great sort of first entry point, because there's a lot of opportunity for coming to events around freshers, and there will be a lot during refreshers. So that's a really great opportunity to meet other international students. And then in terms of interacting with the rest of the community, I think international students disproportionately get involved in students' union democracy, which is really brilliant. And I'd love to see more international students applying for things like Lead MCR, which currently nominations are open for. So international students, please apply. Apply for my job.
One thing I can add on that is there are a lot of students who are interested to do it, but because we just have this 1 year, we have a lot of questions. Yeah. And in that first 3 months, it's hard to figure out how exactly this works, because the whole student union concept could be different in different countries. I was part of a student union back in India, but it's very different. So if we could have that also as part of the freshers, that would be great. Another thing is, can us PG students have more events, please? I think most of the events are catering either undergrads, or it's much easier for postgraduate research students who are here for long terms. Can we have more events, please?
Yeah, I do think that is definitely.
There you go.
Yeah.
There's demand on your student leadership.
Yeah, there you go. I actually do think that PGT students are something that are overlooked a little bit, just because we have, most of the officers are have been undergrad students only, a couple postgrads, but mostly undergrads, and then we have the PGR officer, and then there's no specific PGT. So yeah, I think that's definitely something that we can endeavour to do more.
We are like adolescents. We are neither children nor adults. We are in the middle.
Yeah, I get you. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, yeah, thanks. Will do.
And the Freshers Week. Mm-hmm. First 2 days for us international students, that's when we need to collect our IDs, our DRPs. So we lose our time and we don't get the free stuff. we miss a lot of free stuff.
More free stuff.
More free stuff.
More free stuff.
Always.
Oh, God.
Well, one thing I'll say is come along to the refreshers fairs
Yeah.
at the start of next semester, because hopefully you'll have settled in, you'll know what you're doing by then, and you can focus on the refreshers and the free stuff.
The reason why I say that, because I'm someone, as I said, I missed a lot of things thinking, oh, if I go out much, it's raining, I might fall sick and all that. It took me at least 6 months to settle in and get into the rhythm, and a year is gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it must be hard to settle into a new place. And I think with things going more and more online, and with the likelihood that with the 2035 strategy there will be an increase of online taught stuff. What are your thoughts on what we sort of owe to students in person, in terms of that in-person teaching offer that we have, and how we can keep that as good as possible and prioritise international students being able to come here to Manchester in person to study with us? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think we are going to be offering more things online, but in a funny way, I think that means the online on-campus experience will be even more important, right? Because we need to really provide an experience for students that really means something and is meaningful when they're here with us. And for me, it's more about the kind of movement between the online and in-person that we have to get right. We'll never move to a fully online, we'll never be a fully online institution in everything we do, but we need to do more online for all kinds of reasons, both for reasons of offering our programs to a wider cohort of people who aren't benefiting from university right now, whether in the Greater Manchester region or globally. It's also often a more effective way of delivering sometimes master's programs or short courses or things that people are looking to kind of update their skills or learn something new in a compressed way. And also, I think increasingly students want to mix online with in-person. But the in-person, on-campus experience will always be at the heart of, I think, everything we do. It's just how we get that movement between the two right. And we need to have better systems and better support, better advice, better Wi-Fi, all that stuff we need to kind of work on. But it's always going to be about a combination of in-person and online, and giving students not only a choice, but a kind of seamless movement between the two. And I think that's what's exciting. We can do both really, really well, whereas some institutions have to kind of choose one or the other. And I think we've got a great chance to offer something quite unique. So that's the ambition, that's the goal. I mean, the other interesting thing is the more you do online too, it raises the question of, a sense of belonging. So how do we make sure that if you're doing a course online, you're still getting that sense of I'm at the University of Manchester, I'm meeting people, I'm learning things, I'm having new experiences. And that's why I think it's always going to be a combination of the two. I mean, it's not that you can't have that sense of belonging online as much as in person, but it's a different kind of challenge, I think.
Cool, when you're ready.
Nice. Yeah, so talking of, we spoke about strategy a minute ago and the 2035 strategy, and I think a lot of the strategy conversations have also included talking about increasing international student participation. And if that is something we're looking to do in the next few years, obviously fees for international students are really high, and they only get higher. I'm wondering what your thoughts are on how we can ensure that we're not only enabling the people with the most money across the world to come and study at Manchester. How can we make sure that every international student is included and that participation is available to everyone?
So, I mean, I think the same applies to both domestic and international students. I think the dream is that finance is not an obstacle to coming to the University of Manchester. Ideally, you want students to come based on their talent, on their ambition and their capabilities, and their ability to grow and benefit from the education they get here. So that's the dream. And to get there, we need to really increase the amount of funding we can put into bursaries and scholarships. And we're sort of slowly starting down that path, but that's the dream. And we're going to kick off a big philanthropic campaign next year. And that sort of dream of student access is going to be at the heart of it. It's going to be a big goal for us. So I think that's the first thing. I mean, I think we need to make sure, and we know now that a lot of our international students come from very different backgrounds. Some are coming from more wealthy families. Others, they're here from very, very modest, often poor backgrounds, and they've been able to get scholarships, or they've saved, or their families have made enormous sacrifices. And the same is true of domestic students. So our students are already quite diverse. But we need to make sure that fees don't become the main determinant of whether you can come or not. And that difference between domestic and international fees is a kind of fact of life, given the way the higher education sector works. We're not anticipating changing dramatically the mix of international and domestic students. We think it's probably about right now. And as I said, the goal is to actually find more ways to support international students financially in order for them to come to Manchester. And obviously we need to build more accommodation that students can afford reasonably. I mean, that's a hard thing, we talk about that, but so I think we're going to try and improve the quality of the student experience rather than setting a goal to get more students in future. That's not really part of, I think, where we're going at the moment.
And so are you expecting to set specific priorities around enhancing access and participation for international students?
Yeah, so I would. I mean, this is something that we've talked a bit about in the strategy process so far, but I think there's a role for the student union to play, right, in making sure you're engaging that part of your cohort really well, and I think there's a role for the university to play. I mean, I think we don't put on enough events for international students. We're having a Christmas party this year, which is something I really wanted to do, so we've had a fantastic response to that. But I think there's more things we need to do to engage our international students as a community. It's also something, I think the city can help us too. I think there's a role for the city to play in ensuring international students feel safe, that they have access to the advice and information they need if they're, out in the community doing different things. I mean, what an amazing thing for Manchester to have thousands of people from around the world coming into the city every year. So it's something I've been talking to the city about as well. I've just noticed coming to Manchester, it's probably something we could do more of compared to other places in the world that have really active international student programs. And then finally, yeah, I think we need to do a better job of helping our international students integrate into the university more generally. I think it's still pretty hard, right? I think we leave a lot of stuff up to international students themselves, and they're amazing. They figure it out. You've figured it out, but I think we can do a lot more. So I think the SU and the university could probably do a lot more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so obviously winter break is coming up. Students will have a couple of weeks off of uni, which would be nice. And international students disproportionately stay in Manchester over the Christmas break because it's a lot harder for them to go home and costs a lot more money. What are you doing over the break?
Yeah, so it's our first Manchester trip of Christmas. So lucky for us, our kids are coming to visit us, different parts of the world. So yeah, we're really looking forward to it. But it is. I remember when I was an international student, I didn't always go back. So you're always looking around to find someone to hang out with. So what are you up to over the holidays?
Basically, I'm living at the station. But yeah, I'm exploring the Christmas markets here in Manchester. I didn't do it last year, so I regret it. So people, whoever's watching it, please go out. It's okay.
The Christmas markets.
Yeah.
So I haven't checked them out yet either, so I'm going to check your.
Yeah. Just enjoy the holidays. Like I go there and a lot of deadlines coming in. It can be temporary for some people, but still, just don't do the mistake that I did.
Good. And Charlie, what's open and what's not open? I mean, for students over that. So this is my first Christmas. I'm not sure. What's open and what isn't?
Yeah, so I think the main library and John Runnels Library have a sort of closure period, as well as a lot of the support services on campus are closed from sort of the 20th of December to 1st of January, I think. The Alan Gilbert Learning Commons is open, sort of 9 to 5 or 8 to 5, depending on the days, other than the 25th and 26th. And that's really great because there's really campus space in there. So if you're struggling with paying for your heating, or if you want to just get out of the house, if you're struggling for mates in Manchester, I think that'll be at least a nice place to go and make a hot drink and sit down. Other than that, there's a lot of initiatives in the city. There's a lot of Christmas dinners for people, other wintry activities to do. So I'd say just look out on social media and things like that for a few things to do in the city.